A girl was bullied every day until her babysitter disguised herself as a student and changed everything. Every morning, Livia woke up before the alarm rang, not because she wanted to, but because her body refused to sleep peacefully anymore. She lay still in her bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the distant sounds of the house waking up. Her chest felt tight, her stomach knotted, and the thought of school made her throat ache. For a girl her age, mornings should have been filled with excitement, laughter, and careless thoughts. But for Livia, mornings had become a quiet battle she fought alone. She was 11 years old, and she was tired of pretending, tired of being invisible, tired of being afraid. At school, Livia was known as the quiet one. She sat in the back row, avoided eye contact, and spoke only when absolutely necessary. Teachers described her as polite and well-behaved. Classmates barely noticed her, except when they wanted someone to mock. It started small. Whispers when she passed by, giggles behind her back, notes slipped onto her desk with cruel words written in messy handwriting. At first, Livia tried to ignore it. She told herself it would stop, that if she stayed quiet enough, invisible enough, they would get bored. But bullying doesn't fade when ignored, it grows stronger. Soon the whispers turned into insults. "Why do you dress like that? Do you even know how to talk? Look at her, she's so weird." The words followed her through the hallways, into the classroom, onto the playground. Sometimes they were spoken out loud, other times they were carved into laughter that stabbed just as deeply. What hurt the most wasn't just what the other students did, it was what no one else did. Teachers looked away, classmates stayed silent, adults assumed kids were just being kids. And Livia learned something dangerous very early in life. Silence can hurt more than words. At home, she became an expert at hiding her pain. She forced small smiles at dinner. She answered, "I'm fine," without hesitation. She said school was okay and quickly changed the subject. Her parents were busy, constantly rushing between work, responsibilities, and exhaustion. They loved her, but they didn't see the signs, or maybe they saw them and didn't know how to interpret them. But someone noticed, Helena. Helena was Livia's babysitter, but to Livia she was something much more. She was calm where others were distracted, observant where others were rushed. Helena noticed the way Livia flinched when her phone buzzed with school messages. She noticed the way the girl avoided mirrors. She noticed how Sunday nights ended in silent tears. One afternoon, Helena found Livia sitting on her bed, school backpack still closed, staring at nothing. "You didn't do your homework today," Helena said gently. Livia shrugged. "I didn't feel like it." Helena sat beside her. "Did something happen at school?" Livia shook her head too quickly. "No." But her hands were shaking. Helena didn't push. She had learned that forcing words out of a child only made them retreat further. Instead, she stayed. She sat there in silence, offering presence instead of pressure. Sometimes that was enough. That night, Helena overheard Livia crying softly in the bathroom. Not loud sobs, controlled ones. The kind that come from someone who doesn't want to be heard. That was when Helena knew something was very wrong. The next morning, Livia asked to stay home, complaining of a headache. Helena noticed how her eyes filled with panic when the school bus stopped in front of the house. "Please," Livia whispered, "I don't feel well." Helena placed her hand on her shoulder and felt the tension in her small body. This wasn't just a headache, this was fear. Later that day, while organizing Livia's room, Helena found something that made her heart drop. A notebook hidden at the bottom of the backpack. Inside, between math exercises and drawings, were words written over and over again. "Don't talk. You don't belong. Everyone hates you." Some were written in different handwriting, others were written by Livia herself. Helena closed the notebook slowly, her hands trembling. No child should ever feel this way. That night, Helena tried again. "Livia," she said softly while brushing the girl's hair. "You know you can tell me anything, right?" Livia's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't speak. "Sometimes," Helena continued, "when people hurt us, they make us believe we deserve it. But that's never true." Livia swallowed hard. "They say it's my fault," she whispered. "They say I'm strange." Helena felt something break inside her. "That is not true," she said firmly. "You are not strange. You are kind and brave, and you don't deserve this." Livia finally looked at her. "They laugh at me every day," she confessed. "Every single day." The words fell like stones. Helena hugged her tightly, holding her as Livia cried for the first time without hiding. It was a cry filled with exhaustion, fear, and relief. In that moment, Helena made a promise to herself. She would not let this continue. She would not stay silent. And if the adults at school refused to see what was happening, she would find a way to show them, even if that meant doing something no one would ever expect, something risky, something bold, something that would change everything, because sometimes, to protect a child, you have to step directly into their world. And Helena was ready to do exactly that. The next few days felt heavier than the ones before. For Livia, time no longer moved in hours or days. It moved in moments of anticipation and dread. Every morning followed the same pattern. Her stomach tightened, her hands grew cold, and her heart raced long before she stepped outside the house. School had become a place her body reacted to before her mind could even process it. She tried harder to disappear. She wore darker clothes. She kept her head down. She avoided speaking unless spoken to. But none of it worked. Bullies don't stop when someone shrinks. They notice, and they push further. At school, Livia's name had become a joke. Her silence, a target. During group activities, she was always the last one chosen, or not chosen at all. When teachers asked questions, snickers filled the room if her voice trembled. Even her mistakes, small and human, were magnified into reasons for ridicule. One afternoon during lunch, a tray slipped from her hands. It wasn't dramatic. Just an accident, but laughter exploded around her. Someone clapped, someone recorded with a phone. Someone whispered loud enough for her to hear, "She can't even eat properly." Livia knelt on the floor, shaking, trying to gather spilled food while pretending she couldn't hear them. No one helped. No teacher intervened. When she finally stood up, her face burned with shame, and her chest felt like it was collapsing inward. That night, she didn't talk at dinner. She barely touched her food. Her parents noticed, but exhaustion softened their concern into assumptions. "She's just tired." "It's probably a phase." School is stressful. Helena watched quietly from the corner of the room. She saw the way Livia's hands trembled when her phone buzzed. She saw how the girl flinched at sudden laughter on TV. She saw the fear that didn't leave even when school was far away. Invisible wounds, Helena thought, the kind that don't bleed, but never stop hurting. Later that evening, Livia sat on the couch pretending to read. Helena sat beside her, folding laundry slowly, waiting for the right moment. "Do you want to tell me what happened today?" she asked softly. Livia shook her head. "It was nothing." Helena didn't argue. She simply replied, "Sometimes nothing hurts the most." Livia swallowed hard, but remained silent. The following morning, something changed. Livia didn't pretend to feel sick. She didn't ask to stay home. She just froze. Standing by the door, backpack on her shoulders, she stared at the floor as if stepping outside would cause something terrible to happen. Helena approached carefully. "Livia?" "I can't," the girl whispered. "Can't what?" "I can't go back there." Her voice cracked. Helena knelt in front of her. "Did someone hurt you?" Livia hesitated. Her breathing grew shallow. Finally, she nodded. "They push me," she admitted. "They call me names. They say no one likes me." Helena felt anger rise in her chest, slow, controlled, dangerous. "Did you tell a teacher?" They say I'm too sensitive, Livia replied. They say I should ignore it. Helena closed her eyes for a moment. Ignoring pain doesn't make it disappear. It teaches people they can keep causing it. That afternoon, Helena went to the school. She sat in a bright office with pastel walls and motivational posters. The counselor listened politely, nodding, taking notes. Children can be cruel sometimes, the woman said, but we haven't observed anything serious. Helena leaned forward. My child comes home shaking, she said firmly. She cries alone. She's afraid to walk into your building. The counselor smiled apologetically. We'll keep an eye on it. Helena left with a sinking feeling. An eye wasn't enough. That night, Livia handed Helena her phone. Can you delete something for me? She asked quietly. Helena scrolled and froze. Group messages filled the screen. Memes, edited photos. Cruel jokes, insults disguised as humor. You should disappear. No one would miss you. Why do you even exist? Helena's hands shook as she handed the phone back. Did anyone see this? She asked. Livia shrugged. They all did. Something inside Helena hardened. She sat with Livia on the bed and spoke carefully. None of this is your fault, she said. Do you hear me? Livia nodded but didn't look convinced. People who hurt others do it because they think they can, Helena continued, because no one stops them. Livia looked up. Can you stop them? The question was small. The weight behind it was enormous. Helena didn't answer immediately. That night, while the house slept, Helena sat alone in the kitchen. Her tea went cold as she stared at the wall, replaying everything she had seen and heard. She thought about the school's indifference, the teachers' silence, the cruelty hidden behind smiles, and she realized something unsettling. The problem wasn't invisible, it was ignored. If adults refused to listen, if authority refused to act, then she would have to understand the system from the inside. The idea came quietly, then grew louder, risky, unconventional, possibly dangerous, but effective. Helena stood up slowly, heart pounding. What if she didn't confront the school as an adult? What if she saw everything the way Livia did, from the inside, from the desk, from the hallway? What if she became a student? The thought terrified her and convinced her. The next morning, Helena looked at Livia over breakfast. I need you to trust me, she said. Livia frowned. Why? Because I'm going to help you, Helena replied. But I need to understand everything first. Livia hesitated. Will they get mad? Helena smiled gently. No, she said. They won't even see it coming. That was the moment the plan stopped being a thought and became a decision. Helena would step into Livia's world. She would see the cruelty. She would feel the silence. She would expose the truth. Because sometimes the only way to protect a child is to walk straight into the place that hurts them most. And Helena was no longer afraid. Helena didn't sleep that night. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word Livia had said, every message she had read, every moment of fear she had witnessed in that child's eyes. The house was quiet, but her mind was loud, filled with questions, anger, and an unbearable sense of responsibility. This wasn't just bullying, it was systematic. It was ignored. And it was destroying a child slowly, silently. By morning, Helena knew one thing with absolute certainty. Doing nothing was no longer an option. At breakfast, Livia barely touched her food. She sat curled in her chair, shoulders tense, eyes fixed on the table. Helena watched her carefully, noticing how the girl flinched every time her phone buzzed with notifications from the school group chat. You don't have to go today, Helena said gently. Livia looked up, surprised. Really? Yes, Helena replied. We'll say you're not feeling well. Relief washed over the girl's face, but it lasted only a second before guilt replaced it. They'll talk about me even more, Livia whispered. They always do. Helena reached across the table and held her hand. "Let them," she said quietly. "They won't have control for much longer." Livia frowned. "What do you mean?" Helena hesitated. She wasn't ready to explain everything, not yet. Some plans needed to be fully formed before they were shared. "I mean, you won't be alone anymore," she said instead. Livia nodded slowly, unsure, but trusting. That trust weighed heavily on Helena's chest. Later that morning, after Livia went back to her room, Helena opened her laptop. She began researching the school, its policies, its enrollment process, its loopholes. She searched forums, news articles, parent complaints. Patterns emerged quickly. The school prided itself on appearances. Reputation mattered more than reality. Problems were handled internally. Complaints were reviewed. But real change? Rare. Helena leaned back in her chair, heart pounding. If the school only listened to what happened inside its walls. Then she would step inside, not as an adult, not as an authority figure, as a student. The idea terrified her. She was an adult woman, trained to protect children, not pretend to be one. The risks were obvious. The consequences unpredictable. But every argument against the plan collapsed when she remembered Livia's voice asking, "Can you stop them?" Helena closed her laptop and stared at the wall. "Yes," she whispered to the empty room. "Yes, I can." The preparation began immediately. Helena went through old clothes stored in boxes, jeans, hoodies, sneakers she hadn't worn in years. She studied teenage fashion trends online, learning what blended in and what stood out. She practiced neutral expressions in the mirror, adjusting her posture, softening her presence. She wasn't trying to deceive children. She was trying to reveal the truth adults refused to see. That afternoon, she met with Livia. "I need to tell you something important," Helena said. Livia sat on the bed, hugging a pillow tightly. "Are you in trouble?" the girl asked nervously. "No," Helena replied quickly, "but I need your honesty." Livia nodded. "I'm going to your school," Helena said. Livia blinked. "Like, to talk to them again?" Helena shook her head. "No, I'm going as a student." Silence filled the room. Livia stared at her, eyes wide. "That's impossible." Helena smiled softly. "It's difficult," she admitted, "but not impossible." "Why would you do that?" Livia asked. Helena knelt in front of her. "Because no one believes what's happening, and I need to see it the way you see it." Livia's lips trembled. "They'll hurt you too." Helena's voice was calm, steady. "I'm an adult. I can handle it. You shouldn't have to." Livia hesitated, then whispered, "Promise you won't leave me alone again." Helena hugged her tightly. "I promise." The next step was risky. Helena contacted the school administration under a different identity, claiming to be the guardian of a transfer student. She filled out forms, provided documents, asked questions. The process was disturbingly easy. No background check beyond the surface. No interview. No real concern. Within days it was done. Helena was officially enrolled. The night before her first day, Helena stood in front of the mirror wearing her disguise. Hoodie, backpack, minimal makeup, hair pulled back casually. She looked convincing. But her eyes gave her away. They carried knowledge no student should have. Fear no child should normalize. Resolve no bully could imagine. She took a deep breath. Tomorrow, she would walk into the building that had become Livia's nightmare. Not as a rescuer, as a witness. The following morning, Helena arrived early. The school buzzed with noise, laughter, shouting, lockers slamming. The energy was chaotic, careless. Children moved in groups, forming circles of belonging and exclusion with frightening ease. Helena walked alone. She blended in. She observed everything. In the hallway, she saw a boy shove another into a locker. No teacher intervened. In the classroom, she noticed the way certain students were ignored, while others dominated the space effortlessly. Then she saw Livia. The girl sat at her desk, shoulders hunched, eyes fixed on her notebook. A group of students nearby whispered and laughed, glancing in her direction. Helena felt her chest tighten. This was real, worse than imagined. During class, Helena watched as the teacher dismissed a cruel comment with a sigh. "Enough," the teacher said. "Focus on your work." No consequences. No accountability. At lunch, Helena sat at an empty table, pretending to eat while listening. "Did you see her today? She looks even worse. Why does she even come here?" Helena's hands clenched under the table. She forced herself to stay still, to listen, to remember. By the end of the day, Helena felt emotionally drained, but more determined than ever. The cruelty wasn't hidden. It was normalized, enabled by silence and disguised as jokes. When Helena returned home that afternoon, Livia ran to her. "How was school?" Livia asked carefully. Helena took a deep breath. "I saw everything," she said. Livia looked down. "I told you." Helena cupped the girl's face gently. "And now," she said firmly, "I know exactly what to do." That night, Helena began documenting everything: names, behaviors, times, witnesses. She wasn't just protecting Livia anymore. She was preparing to expose a system. A system that thrived on children believing they were alone. But they weren't. Not anymore. And Helena was just getting started. Helena quickly learned that the classroom had its own rules. They weren't written on the walls. They weren't spoken out loud. But everyone knew them. Who could speak, who should stay quiet, who belonged and who didn't. From the moment Helena took her seat near the back of the room, she felt the invisible hierarchy settle around her like a thick fog. Students gravitated toward familiar groups, chairs scraping loudly as they claimed territory. Laughter erupted in pockets, sharp and careless, while others kept their heads down, shrinking into themselves. Livia sat 3 rows ahead. She didn't look back. Helena understood why. Looking back meant inviting attention, and attention in this place was dangerous. The teacher entered the room, carrying books and a tired expression. Attendance was called. Voices answered confidently, lazily, or not at all. When Livia's name was spoken, there was a pause. "Yes," Livia whispered. A few students snickered. The teacher didn't react. Helena felt something tighten inside her chest. This was how it worked, not through loud cruelty, but through quiet permission. During the lesson, Helena watched closely. She noticed how certain students interrupted freely, how jokes were tolerated when they came from the right people. She noticed how mistakes made by some were brushed off, while mistakes made by others became entertainment. When Livia raised her hand, hesitantly, the room seemed to hold its breath. "Yes?" the teacher said, already glancing away. Livia answered correctly. Someone behind her whispered, "Didn't expect that." Laughter followed. The teacher cleared her throat. "Let's move on." No correction, no warning, no acknowledgement of what had just happened. Helena wrote everything down, not just the words, but the reactions, the silences, the patterns. At lunch, Helena sat alone again, this time closer to the group Livia usually avoided. She listened without looking interested, pretending to scroll on her phone. "That girl thinks she's better than us," one voice said. "She never talks." "Yeah, she's creepy," another voice laughed. "Maybe she's just stupid." Helena felt her jaw tighten. Then someone said, "Did you see her notebook? It's so messy, like her." That was when Livia stood up. She hadn't said a word. She simply picked up her tray and walked away, shoulders shaking, eyes fixed on the floor. No one followed. No one stopped her. Helena watched as Livia left the cafeteria, food untouched, and no adult noticed. That afternoon, Helena experienced her first direct test. During a group assignment, the teacher divided the class randomly. Helena was placed in the same group as Livia and 2 of the students who tormented her the most. The air shifted immediately. One of them rolled her eyes, another sighed loudly. "This is going to be so annoying," one girl muttered. Helena kept her head down, playing her role. Livia stared at the table, fingers twisting together. "Well," the girl said, "are you going to say something or just sit there?" Livia opened her mouth, closed it again. Helena spoke instead. "We can start by dividing the work," she said calmly. The group looked at her for the first time. "And who are you?" the girl asked, her tone sharp. "Just another student," Helena replied. The girl smirked. "Then stay out of it." Helena met her gaze without blinking. "Everyone here is part of the group." The tension was immediate. The girl scoffed, clearly annoyed, but said nothing more. Livia glanced at Helena just for a second. Hope flickered there, small, fragile. After class, Helena followed the group into the hallway. She watched as one of the students leaned in close to Livia's ear. "You think you're safe now?" the girl whispered. Helena saw Livia flinch. That night, Helena documented everything. Not emotionally, precisely. Dates, names, exact phrases. She knew emotions could be dismissed, facts could not. The next day, the bullying escalated. Someone hid Livia's backpack. Someone scribbled insults on her desk. Someone tripped her in the hallway and laughed when she fell. And still, no adult intervened. Helena began to understand the full scope of the problem. This wasn't about one or two cruel students. It was about a system that allowed cruelty to flourish, a system that valued quiet classrooms over safe children. During physical education, Helena saw something that made her hands shake. The class was divided into teams. Livia was chosen last, again. When she missed a pass, a boy shouted, "Of course she did!" The coach blew the whistle. "Focus," he said, "it's just a game. Just a game." Livia's eyes filled with tears. Helena stepped forward before she could stop herself. "She was pushed," Helena said. The coach frowned. "I didn't see that." "It happened," Helena replied. The coach sighed. "Let's move on." And just like that, the moment was erased. Except it wasn't. Not for Livia, not for Helena. That evening, Helena found Livia sitting on her bed, knees pulled to her chest. "They hate me," Livia whispered. Helena sat beside her. "They're afraid," Helena corrected softly. Livia shook her head. "They're not afraid, they're strong." Helena looked at her carefully. "No," she said, "they're loud, there's a difference." Livia was quiet for a long moment. "Why are you doing this?" she finally asked. "Why are you helping me?" Helena didn't answer immediately, because the truth was complicated, because she saw herself in Livia, because she had once been a quiet child in a loud world, because no one had stepped in for her. "Because you deserve to feel safe," Helena said instead, "and because this isn't your fault." The following day, Helena noticed something new. Other students were watching her, whispering, curious. Someone asked, "Why do you always sit with her?" Helena shrugged. "Why not?" The question seemed to unsettle them. Small shifts began to happen. A chair moved closer to Livia's desk. A notebook was shared without mockery. A quiet, "Are you okay?" whispered when no one else was listening. Change didn't arrive loudly. It arrived cautiously, but the bullies noticed too. One afternoon, Helena found a note in her locker. "Mind your own business." She stared at the words for a long time. Good, she thought. They're paying attention. That meant the truth was getting closer to the surface. Helena knew she was running out of time. The longer she stayed, the greater the risk of being exposed. But she also knew she hadn't gathered enough yet. She needed one undeniable moment, one moment the school could not ignore. And it was coming. She could feel it, because when systems are challenged, they push back, hard. And Helena was ready. The tension that had been building for weeks finally reached its breaking point on a Thursday morning. Elena felt it the moment she walked through the school doors. The air was different, heavier, charged with something sharp and unstable. Whispers followed her down the hallway, not the careless kind she had grown used to, but urgent ones. Students glanced at her, then quickly looked away. A few smirked, others watched with open curiosity. The bullies knew something was happening, and that meant danger. Helena took her seat, heart steady but alert. She glanced toward Livia, who sat stiffly at her desk, hands clenched together so tightly her knuckles were white. The girl didn't look up, but Helena could see the fear in her posture. Something was coming. The teacher began the lesson, unaware, or pretending to be unaware, of the storm brewing beneath the surface. Halfway through the class, a folded piece of paper landed on Livia's desk. She froze. Slowly, trembling, she opened it. Her face drained of color. Helena watched as Livia's breathing changed. Short, shallow breaths, the kind that come before panic. Helena leaned forward slightly. "What is it?" she whispered. Livia shook her head, eyes filling with tears. "I can't," she whispered back. The bell rang before Helena could say more. Students poured into the hallway, laughing, shouting, pushing. Livia stood slowly, clutching the note in her hand as if it were burning her skin. Helena followed at a distance. Near the lockers, the confrontation happened. One of the girls stepped directly in front of Livia, blocking her path. Others formed a loose circle around them, close enough to watch, far enough to pretend they weren't involved. "Did you like the note?" the girl asked sweetly. Livia tried to step around her. "Give it back," the girl said sharply. "Let's read it out loud." "No," Livia whispered. The girl laughed and snatched the paper from Livia's hand. "Nobody wants you here," she read loudly. "Everyone would be happier if you disappeared." Laughter erupted. Livia's knees buckled. That was the moment Helena stepped forward. "Stop!" Her voice cut through the noise, calm, firm, unmistakable. Every head turned. "This doesn't concern you," the girl snapped. Helena met her gaze. "It does," she said. "It concerns everyone." The hallway fell silent. A teacher appeared at the end of the corridor, frowning. "What's going on here?" the teacher asked. The girl quickly shifted her tone. "Nothing," she said. "We were just joking." Helena turned to the teacher. "This student is being harassed," she said clearly. "Repeatedly." The teacher sighed. "Let's all calm down." Livia let out a broken sob. "I can't do this anymore," she cried. "I can't." The words echoed down the hallway. Students froze. Phones were raised. The moment became impossible to ignore. The teacher hesitated. "Livia, let's talk in my office." "No," Helena interrupted. Her heart pounded, but her voice didn't waver. "No more private conversations. No more silence." The teacher stared at her. "Who do you think you are?" Helena took a deep breath, and then she said the words that shattered everything. "My name is Helena," she said, "and I am not a student." Gasps rippled through the hallway. The bullies' faces went pale. "I am Livia's babysitter," Helena continued, "and I have been here for weeks because no one listened when we asked for help." The teacher's mouth fell open. "That's impossible, is it?" Helena asked. "Because I have documentation, messages, witnesses, dates, times." She reached into her backpack and pulled out a folder. "And I have recordings." The hallway exploded into chaos. Teachers rushed in. Students whispered frantically. Phones captured everything. The principal arrived moments later, face tight with anger and panic. "What is going on here?" he demanded. Helena stood tall. "What's been going on for months?" she replied. "Bullying, neglect, and silence." She handed him the folder. The principal flipped through the pages, his expression changing with every line. Livia stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. Helena turned to her and knelt. "You did nothing wrong," she said softly. "Nothing." Security escorted the students away. Livia was taken to a quiet room. Helena was asked to remain in the hallway. For the first time since entering the school, Helena felt fear, not for herself, but for what would happen next. Had she gone too far? Minutes later felt like hours. Finally, the principal returned. "We will be opening a full investigation," he said stiffly. "Effective immediately." Helena nodded. "That's all I wanted," she said. Livia was released into Helena's arms. The girl clung to her, shaking. "Is it over?" Livia whispered. Helena held her tightly. "The worst part is," she said, "because now everyone sees it." As they left the building together, students watched silently. No laughter, no whispers, only shock. The system had been exposed, and nothing would ever be the same again. The school felt different after that day. It wasn't something that could be measured or written down, but everyone felt it. The walls that once echoed with careless laughter now held a cautious silence. Hallways that had been stages for cruelty became spaces of watchful restraint. The truth had surfaced, and once it did, it could not be pushed back into the shadows. For Livia, the days immediately following the incident were confusing. She stayed home at first, wrapped in blankets, surrounded by a quiet she wasn't used to. The fear that had once lived permanently in her chest didn't disappear overnight, but it loosened its grip. For the first time in months, she slept through the night without waking up in panic. Helena stayed close, not hovering, not controlling, just present. That presence made all the difference. The school contacted Livia's parents directly. Meetings were scheduled, reports were reviewed. Messages that had once been ignored were now treated as evidence. Teachers who had looked away were suddenly attentive, careful with their words, deliberate with their actions. An investigation was officially opened, not quietly, not internally, but publicly. Parents were informed. Policies were revised. Counselors were brought in. And for the first time, the word accountability echoed through the administration offices. Livia's parents were stunned. They sat at the kitchen table one evening, papers spread out before them, hands shaking as they read through what Helena had documented. "We had no idea," her mother whispered, tears streaming down her face. Her father stared at the pages, jaw clenched. "She was suffering right in front of us," he said, "and we didn't see it." Livia listened from the doorway. She didn't feel angry. She felt seen. Her parents apologized that night, not with excuses, but with honesty. They promised to listen more carefully, to ask better questions, to never dismiss her feelings again. Helena watched quietly, knowing that real change begins with uncomfortable truths. A week later, Livia returned to school. She didn't want to go at first. Her hands shook as she stood at the front door, backpack hanging heavy on her shoulders. Helena knelt in front of her. "You don't have to be brave," she said gently. "You just have to take one step." Livia nodded. Inside the school, the atmosphere had shifted. Some students avoided eye contact. Others looked ashamed. A few, quiet ones Helena had noticed before, offered small, hesitant smiles. The bullies were gone from the classroom. Temporarily removed, required to attend counseling sessions. Their absence felt like a strange quiet, unfamiliar but welcome. In class, the teacher addressed the room. "We're going to do things differently here," she said. "Everyone deserves to feel safe." This time, the words didn't feel empty. Livia sat down and opened her notebook. No one laughed, no one whispered. When she raised her hand, the room waited. She answered. And for the first time, the teacher smiled. After school, Livia walked out holding her head higher, not because everything was suddenly perfect, but because she knew something fundamental had changed. She wasn't invisible anymore. Helena, meanwhile, faced her own consequences. The school administration called her in for a final meeting. Lawyers were mentioned, rules were cited, boundaries discussed. "You violated protocol," the principal said stiffly. Helena nodded. "I know. You deceived the institution." "Yes." There was a long pause. "But you also exposed a failure we can't deny," the principal continued, "one that harmed a child." Helena met his gaze. "I would do it again," she said calmly, "for any child." The principal exhaled slowly. "You're no longer allowed on campus," he said. Helena nodded again. "I understand." And as she stood to leave, he added quietly, "But what you did forced us to change. That matters." Helena didn't respond. She didn't need recognition. She needed results. At home, Livia hugged her tightly that evening. "Are you mad?" Livia asked softly. Helena smiled. "No," she said. "I'm proud." "Of me?" Livia asked. "Of you," Helena replied. "And of us." Weeks passed. The school implemented peer support programs, anonymous reporting systems, teacher training workshops. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress, and progress saves lives. Livia started therapy. She began drawing again, not spirals of pain, but scenes filled with light, movement, and color. She laughed more. She spoke louder. She even made a friend, another girl who had been quiet for too long. One afternoon, Livia came home smiling. "I talked in class today," she announced. Helena looked up. "About what?" "Myself." Helena's eyes filled with tears. That night, as Helena packed her things, knowing her role as babysitter was coming to an end, Livia sat beside her. "You're not leaving forever, right?" Livia asked. Helena closed the suitcase and turned to her. "No," she said. "I'm just stepping back. You don't need someone to fight your battles anymore." Livia thought about that. "I think," she said slowly, "I learned how to fight them myself." Helena smiled. "That's all I ever wanted." And on Livia's last day of school before the break, she stood in front of the class during an assembly. Her hands shook, but she didn't stop. "I used to think being quiet meant being weak," she said, "but I was wrong. Being quiet just means you've been waiting to be heard." The room was silent. "And now," she finished, "I know my voice matters." Applause filled the room, real applause. Helena watched from the doorway, outside the system, but forever part of the story. As Livia walked toward her afterward, smiling brighter than Helena had ever seen, one truth became clear. The world didn't change because one woman pretended to be a student. It changed because one child was finally believed, and because silence, once broken, can never fully return.